When considering the criteria for what makes a boss battle excellent or terrible, an underrated feature is the grounds it takes place on. At the dramatic end of the quality spectrum, boss arenas can make or break the bosses we love or hate. So after ranking all of the areas in the Souls games, it's time to reflect on the bits beyond the fog. Evaluating the quality of over 150 boss arenas and narrowing it down to the 10 worst and best is by no means an easy feat. I had to look at the foundations of each, starting with aesthetic design to the way boss mechanics are enhanced or detracted from by arena structure, all the way to the mechanics of the arenas themselves. With that, I was able to give us today's list of FromSoft's biggest boss arena atrocities. But before we take a dive into the deep end, let's give our return sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends, a look. For those who've missed out, Raid is a dark fantasy RPG taking the mobile landscape by storm with over 10 million players worldwide. The game has over 400 champions to collect and customize, a campaign with a deep storyline, raids with friends, a full PvP arena, and it is completely free to play. It's been awesome having a top-notch game to play anytime, anywhere, but don't take my word for it. Check their near-perfect rating with over 300,000 reviews. The game's momentum shows no signs of slowing down with a new roadmap for the next 6 months featuring a new tag team arena and bosses that will provide loads of entertainment for you and your clanmates. To get in on the fun, click the link in the description to download Raid, and new players that join in the next 30 days will receive 100,000 free silver, a 1-day XP boost, and a badass champion for free, the Executioner. I hope to see you out there, and thanks for listening. Without further ado, let's kick off the top 10 worst boss arenas in the Souls series. Number 10, Moonlight Butterfly. Moonlight Butter doesn't fly, you idiot, and neither do I. I just can't pass up the opportunity to pile on how I hate nearly every aspect of this glorified mosquito every chance I get. The opening line says it all. I take huge exception to the fact this thing can float in the air for what feels like decades while I'm turning gray and wait on the bridge for it to grace me with its presence. The arena itself doesn't matter if you're a ranged build, just dodge and fire until it's over. But if you're a melee build, it's a waiting game on a boring bridge. How cool would the fight have been if you had to run through some kind of rising obstacle course while the butter bitch floated ahead of you shooting various rays of magic? Then eventually you could reach a peak and fire an arrow to knock it down, you know, kinda like the Dragon God without the stealth. But it's actually good. To me, there was so much creativity that could have been done in terms of an arena to make the fight more exciting for all builds, but instead it's a trial in staying awake waiting for the butter to finally land. The boss may be imbalanced and boring mechanically on its own, but the arena only compounds the issue, making it worse. Number 9, Old Iron King. Old Iron King's hole. We meet again. Every godforsaken playthrough. But outside the hole's unsettling gravitational pull, you might think there's little wrong with the arena, and you'd be half right. The other problem I have is a case of Tiny Island Syndrome. Do me a favor and close your eyes. I want you to think of a giant, beefed up demonic monster. His only two functions are to deeply fist you or fry you either by yeeting you into the nearby lava pool or roasting you with his fire breath. Now imagine what type of arena a boss with such mechanics would have. Considering he's a giant with the range you'd expect to accompany that, his ability to punch or flame you is based on quite a large proximity. So when you match that with an arena that is hardly the size of a bee's dick, you get an immediate problem. There's not enough room to provide a fair margin for air to dodge many of the king's attacks, at least when compared to his peers. Mulling this over, you'll realize that this is less about overcoming the boss and more about overcoming the arena. The real boss isn't the king, it's avoiding the lava. And that's not what I punch my ticket for when I enter a fog gate. In my mind, the developers got enamored with the idea of creating a fight based around an arena, and as you'll see in some of today's entries, that not only makes for a crappy arena, but also a lackluster boss. Number 8, Throne Watcher and Defender. In a polar opposite to our previous entry, Throne Watcher and Defender's arena is massive. In this case, the problem isn't the size, but the structure. While there may be ample room to maneuver, that's only the base of what is needed in a fight like this. When tasked with fighting more than one boss on your own, you need something, anything, to break up aggro. To say FromSoft hadn't learned this already, you look no further than Ornstein and Smo. There are two direct things that make this imbalanced fight work. One, the contrast in speed between Ornstein and Smo's movements, and two, there are pillars in the arena that you can use to break up aggro and isolate each of them. For Throne Watcher and Defender, there is a contrast between their speed, so that component is solidly there within their own mechanical design. The failure here is the arena. There's absolutely nothing here to break up aggro and isolate them other than to run around like a chicken with its head cut off and hope for the best. It's a baffling design decision when you consider that not only Ornstein and Smo set the standard in the previous game, but there are loads of solid examples in the same damn game. Belfry Gargoyles. They come one by one, which at least gives you the opportunity to not get gangbanged if you have the DPS. Burnt Ivory King. You're rewarded by exploring the level for help to clear the ads out before the fight, which may be optional, but it at least exists as a choice. Dark Lurker. The second boss doesn't spawn until you're halfway into the first health bar, giving you a head start at the least and an opportunity to quickly melt the first one immediately at your best. Alana the Squalid Queen. Works as a caster and gives you moments of reprieve between her attacks to fight her minions, unless you get Velstadt. Gang Squad. An obstacle course with 2 levels that helps you run wildly to split them up, plus the archer sticks behind. Lud and Zaylan. The same as Dark Lurker. Prowling Magus and Congregation. Royal Rat Authority. The rats die quickly enough to make it one-on-one, or you do. Royal Rat Vanguard. Statues break everything up, and the punching bag of a boss has a static spawn point you can use to your advantage. Ruin Sentinels. You have the option to stay on higher ground and can kill 2 of the 3 sentinels without leaving it. Skeleton Lords. There are 2 piles to kite skeletons around while breaking the boss's line of sight. Twin Dragon Riders. One starts on higher ground with a ranged build to keep them split, and the archer has far less HP. And finally, Throne Watcher and Defender. They buff for about 2 seconds, keeping them split up, and sometimes will stand still doing nothing in a random inconsistency that leaves no room for actual strategy. Whether it be the arena, an external factor, or a design feature, every single gang fight in this game gives you some strategic angle to work with. But since Throne Watcher and Defender lack that in any significant way with their design, they are begging for some kind of boundaries in the arena to help break aggro. I'm going to assume that this lapse in developer judgment comes from the arena being used for 2 more bosses following this duo. There's a simple solution though, just have a few boundaries that are broken when Nashandra enters the arena, problem solved. It's a real shame because I do enjoy this boss, but they're held back by this failure in arena design. Number 7, Kailash, Host of the Nightmare. In a way, you could argue that Kailash's arena has an advantage that few others in the series have. It's more of a mini area than a boss arena. When you start, you're enclosed in a relatively small space with a few basic mobs and end in a small room where you fight the boss. But once you whittle down half of his HP, the rest of the arena opens up and there are deviations for loot that have nothing to do with the boss whatsoever. I think this is meant to throw you off as part of the puzzle aspect of hunting down Kailash, and it works to disorient you and waste your resources on basic enemies. Then once you finally find Kailash, you're stuck in a square room once again to finish the fight. Here are my problems. While I appreciate that the arena wants to add to the mystery, when I get to a boss, I'm not looking for a pseudo area. Part of my reward for making it to the boss is being done fighting basic bitches. Then consider that once you've done the fight once, there is no mystery. You know exactly where to go and you're liable to ignore the other paths, making them worthless on repeat runs. Finally, trapping you in a small room with Kailash at the end when he can use a call beyond is brutal, not to mention you're forced to take an immediate dip in HP just to drop into the second arena. There are too many pieces here that just don't work for me, and that's aside from Kailash being lackluster as a boss already. But at least he feels like a boss, unlike the host of our next arena. Number 6, Ancient Wyvern. Take everything I just said about the problems with Kailash and apply them to the Wyvern. Then consider you're not even rewarded with a boss battle, but a one-hit whomp whomp. That's a disappointment to be sure, but the real reason the Wyvern finds itself above Kailash is the run-up to it. For Kailash, you have the option to run past the basic mobs with minimal difficulty. The Wyvern was clearly designed to force you to fight all those little dragon shits to get to it. In fairness, unlike Kailash, making it to the Wyvern once is a near guaranteed kill assuming you don't flub the drop. Still, I hate that the concept for the boss was to make the arena a mini area chock full of standard enemies ended with a flat note that can hardly be considered a boss fight. Much like the old Iron King, I think this is a case of developers being excited by turning the idea of a boss battle on its head by making the actual challenge the run-up, but it leaves me frustrated with the arena and dissatisfied with its conclusion. Number 5, Mytha the Baneful Queen. Considering FromSoft's undying love for poisoning its areas, it's a wonder there aren't more poison arenas. Unfortunately, Mytha is here to fill that hole. That's really all there is to it. It's a circular arena, nothing exciting about it, but it's full of poison. That is, unless you have the know-how to take a torch and light a watermill nearby, because that makes total sense. If you do, you'll drain the majority of the poison, giving you a solid circle to battle on, but unless you're some kind of exploratory savant or use the internet, I'd wager you wouldn't figure out how to drain it on your first playthrough. The only reason it isn't higher on the list is because veteran players will be able to avoid this downside, but I think the thought behind it for fresh experiences deserves this dishonorable mention. Number 4, Maiden Astraea. If we're gonna rag on Mythos Poison Arena, then it's fair to give Maiden Astraea the same treatment. When you enter, you have 3 options. Option 1 is to go to the top right of the arena and pelt Astraea with arrows until she dies. In other words, the boring option. Option 2 is to go to the left side and take on the Pancake King Garl Vinland on a tiny cliff. In other words, the painful option. Option 3 is to go down the middle through the swamp that gives you the plague immediately upon touch and summons an ungodly amount of skinless babies to devour you. In other words, the bullshit option. So you can subject yourself to boredom, pain, or bullshit. Pick your plague. In terms of lore, Maiden Astraea being protected at the heart of the plague-ridden land by those she sought to heal is matched well by the aesthetics and mechanics of the aforementioned options, but that doesn't mean they work well in practice. Ending the fight with your bow is anticlimactic, overly easy, and shouldn't be an option. Fighting Vinland to get to her is awesome, but the narrow cliff you face him on hampers your options in what would otherwise be an exciting battle. And the final option feels downright impossible. I'm sure it's to encourage you to fight Vinland, but it doesn't make it any better. Plus, I have to say the plague is overtuned against you, and those babies are too grotesque for my taste. Of all the bosses on today's list, this is undoubtedly my favorite, and it's not even close. But the quality of the arena and the options within does not do the tragedy of killing Maiden Astraea justice. Number 3, Centipede Demon. It's Old Iron King the prequel. When you enter the arena, you'll find yourself landlocked on a tiny piece of land matched with an outrageously large lava expanse. There is an optional area to the side that is much larger, but more often than not, you'll die in the lava trying to reach it. You can get the orange shard ring by cutting off the tail of the demon, but it requires getting a specific attack. The problem compared to the Old Iron King is that the centipede doesn't stay locked to the land nearby, but instead loves to hang out in the middle of the lava pool and attack from afar. On the flip side, it doesn't only stay in the lava, so it will come on your tiny turf and start stomping all over your head in a nightmare for your camera. Finally, pour one out for the majority of players who had their eyes assaulted by the blinding neon orange lava the base game was plagued with. Everything about the arena serves to work against you in this fight, particularly as a melee player, and that's more than enough to land it inside the top 3. Number 2, Capra Demon. Capra Demon itself is not a bad boss mechanically, far from it. I actually like all the different moves it throws at you, it has great visual design, and its speed amps up the pressure in all the right ways. But that's the problem. Its moveset and aggression hits the perfect amount of pressure on its own, so when you add in 2 dogs to chip away at your health and attention in the beginning, that's a problem. Then consider that you're shoved into an arena the size of a shoebox, it amplifies everything to a level of terrible that is nearly unrivaled. In my mind, there is no doubt FromSoft was trolling with the arena design. The small size, the dog duo, and the speed of Capra were meant to fluster you in an ill-intentioned way, and they succeeded. The only saving grace is the staircase. A weird rhyme, but true nonetheless. You can use the stairs to split up the dogs and Capra to make the battle one-on-one quickly, but it's still a claustrophobic shit show. If it weren't for the absurd level of trolling FromSoft did with the final arena, this would be the undisputed worst boss arena in the franchise. And the number 1 worst boss arena in the franchise, Bed of Chaos. If you think about it, the Bed of Chaos wouldn't be all that bad if it weren't for the arena. Imagine running from side to side, only having to deal with creative attacks from a stationary boss, then fighting through interesting barriers to entry to the bug within. It might not be perfect, but it sure as hell would be better than the ground crumbling from beneath you matched with lanky arms to sweep you in. Put bluntly, this is not a platformer. This would work in a platforming game, but this is not a platforming game. I fully believe the developers designed this fight intending for you to die at least once, and just like Capra, they intended for it to be cheap and frustrating. The one saving grace here is that your progress isn't reset upon death, but that's a boss design decision, not the arena. The arena is the core of what makes the Bed of Chaos the horrendous experience that it is, and that's more than enough to earn the worst boss in the franchise's arena the title of worst arena in the franchise. But of course, that's just my opinion. What boss arenas in the Souls series are your least favorites? Let us know in the comments below. With summer at an end, new game releases are on the horizon, which means boss rankings are back on the menu. Be sure to subscribe for that and more of the top 100 best games of all time. I want to thank you all for watching, much love to you, and I'll see you in the next video.